Hey guys, it's Bewildering Bedtime Games here. And hey, it's no secret that I like weird video games. I try to put on the pretense that I'm a civilized human being, but deep down I'm a psychopath that thinks that crime is funny, and I've made like 2 and soon to be 3 videos about Pokemon Channel. The game where you just watch Pikachu do things. My favorite system to find weird games on is the PlayStation 1. It's just a goldmine of stuff that I've never heard of. I just used to look up the entire PS1 game library and pick ones at random to play. That's how I came up with the Hugo the Evil Mirror video back in the day. The king of weird PS1 games to me, however, is LSD Dream Emulator. This game was conceived by Osamu Sato, who was a photographer and musician prior to getting into computer art in the 1990s. Around this time, he would experiment with 3D video art that had a dimension of interactivity to it. His intent wasn't to make full-on video games because he was bad at them. He instead used the PS1 to make his interactive art projects. But we all know that despite his attempts at fooling us, they're still video games. It even says on the cover. Around 1994, his first game, Eastern Mind: The Lost Souls of I cannot pronounce this, did well enough to receive funding for another project. It was with this funding and the combined inspiration of a dream diary kept by game developer Huriko Nishikawa and being awful at video games that he came up with LSD Dream Emulator. Now the dream diary gave him the idea of making a game that simulated a dream, and crashing into mini cars and racing games gave him the inspiration of crashing a car into a wall and teleporting into a different dimension. Combining these two ideas, you get LSD Dream Emulator, a game where you walk around dreamscapes, and if you touch anything you get teleported to another area. There are no objectives, you just walk around and observe the wacky stuff happening around you. If you die in a dream or you spend too much time in a dream, it just ends and you move on to the next day. These dreams are then recorded into a sort of virtual dream journal that keeps track of what type of dream just happened. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I understand what this chart means in theory, but I can never guess how the game decides where to place the points. But it looks cool, so it's fine by me. This is a simple concept for a game, but man, it's done so well. Dreams have an uncanny valley nature to them for me, and this just completely nails that. During my first time playing this, I just didn't know what it would throw at me. You could be having a dream just admiring the wildlife, and you touch one wrong intestine baby, and next thing you know, you realize you left the keys in your car. On top of this, the game just gets even weirder as your day count gets higher. Textures start getting replaced with kanji, colors start to get crazy, and sometimes videos that don't make any sense at all just play and count as an entire dream. And the constant threat to your progress is the man in the gray trench coat. He stalks you and resets all of the textures if you look at him. I also think that the game being in the PS1 adds to the uncanny nature of the game because it runs at like 10 frames per second and stuff just kind of pops up sometimes and you don't even expect it. And I must mention Sato's music because it works so well. Apparently there are over 500 songs that are randomly generated based on samples. So one moment you could just be listening to this jolly, upbeat, not chaotic at all song with duck samples, and in the next moment, you could be listening to the sounds of the void with no duck samples. It just ties the whole experience together. The game, however, is finite. There are a set number of areas to explore that are all connected to a main hub, and there are only so many events that could happen and things that could change. It's impressive for a small PS1 game, but I want more. A dream game for me would be a sequel to this with modern day hardware. And if I had any sort of game developing talent, I'd try to make it happen. Just imagine the possibilities if this is what could be made on the PlayStation 1. You could pretty much do as much crazy stuff as you'd want nowadays. Now this is where you're wondering, didn't you make this exact same video when you were 15? And the answer is yes, actually. I've been reading the exact same script that I made in 2014. But now is where I branch off. I'm going to come up with my own idea for an LSD Dream Emulator sequel by creating my own dream journal. Each day I'll tell you what happened in my dream and how I'd put it in my game if I had any sort of talent. I also rewatched my original LSD video recently and would like to apologize for jokingly implying that Huriko Nishikawa was crazy for some of these dreams, just in case my dreams are even wilder, which is a real possibility. I was playing baseball and the 2 people above me in the batting order hit a home run. I'm like, this will be a piece of cake. But when I go up to bat, my arms and legs felt like noodles and I hit the weakest ground ball ever. Then the pitcher just kept throwing me practice balls and I hit like 3 more weak hits and just felt sad. During the same night, I had another baseball dream where there were like 9 people in the outfield and there's supposed to be 3. The other team just kept hitting home runs and doubles, but my feet were glued to the ground, so I couldn't do anything about it. In the game version of this, I'd include some sort of large baseball stadium area, where occasionally you'd get stuck for no reason. Also, random characters and weird creatures would just appear in the crowd or as the other team. The stadium could also morph depending on what type of dream you're having. You could even have some of your favorite licensed characters like SpongeBob and Sheen from Planet Sheen play alongside your favorite MLB pros in a Danny Phantom stadium. This is just Nicktoons MLB. Hey, we're not all perfect here. I immediately forgot my dream when I woke up, and this occasionally happens. But for these days, I'm just going to make a weird video inspired by the videos that played during the game.
Oh my! Oh no! Oh no! Oh, no, blah 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 blah.
I'm riding in a car at night and whoever is driving stops at a very spooky gas station. Next thing I know, I'm going to the grocery store next to the gas station. The lights inside of this grocery store are super dim and it's even spookier than the gas station itself. I felt like I was being watched and I had a strange voice telling me to do many things that I immediately forgot. There are also cats with strange powers in the grocery store. Yeah, I wrote that down. This sort of dream is pretty similar to the Violence District in LSD Dream Emulator. So a more detailed Violence District with buildings like this grocery store that you can go in would be awesome. Random stuff could just happen in these areas like the inexplicable magical cats. During especially bad dreams, randomized voices would be a super good touch. Especially if sometimes they're so quiet that you just question if they're even in the game. Make sure your pants are properly fastened to your body for this one, because you just might lose them if they are. The dream starts out in my house, but instead of it being my regular house, it's overgrown with plants. There's also a new room that has a hot tub in it. Now you gotta be thinking, that sounds pretty sweet, Bewildering Bedtime Games. But the problem here is there's a possibly poisonous scorpion in the room keeping anybody from using the hot tub. The dream then just changes almost like when you touch something in the game, which is something you should get used to because my dreams just kind of shift around sometimes like this. I'm now at my grandma's old house that I haven't been inside since I was like 10. And there's a super big TV mounted from the ceiling with a glass table underneath. There's also like 8 cats, even though my grandma never had cats, and they're knocking everything over, including the glass table. And then I just teleport to a couch and the layout of the room changes to where the TV is on the ground and I'm facing it. This time the TV is on and it has 22,065 channels. I vividly remembered after I woke up that I was just sitting on this couch and I thought to myself, this is enough entertainment for the rest of my life. I was then teleported into a car with my family and we were heading to a smoothie place. The problem is the road is under construction and the concrete of the road is still setting. So the car just gets stuck in the concrete, but that doesn't stop us from leaving the car and walking the rest of the way to go get the smoothie. Inside of the smoothie place, I noted that there was some crazy electronic music that was playing sort of like this. I also noted that somewhere in this dream timeline that I lost track of, I went through an underground tunnel that led to an ocean with one single island. Yes, one. As for what I'd add into the game from this dream, maybe random weird houses you could explore. Or maybe an event where you're riding in a car and it just gets stuck. Oh yeah, and a lot of cats because apparently that's like a very common thing in my dreams. The only thing I remembered was that I was in an old looking room with a bunch of random people. They were all running around and screaming while passing around a VR headset. This is ridiculous. Like, somebody desperately offered me the VR headset, but I declined their offer. This could be a super rare event in the game that only the luckiest people would encounter. And if you put on the headset, the game deletes System 32 from your computer. I forgot this dream too, so enjoy another video. Surprise, surprise, it's another baseball dream. I'm beginning to think that liking baseball might be one of my biggest character flaws. Regardless, the premise of this one is a little bit different at least. I'm asked by my former baseball coach to sub for his current baseball team. The problem with this is that in the dream I'm still 22, but his baseball team is like a baseball team for 14-year-olds. The ethical problems that arise with this is that I'm a grown man, so I can hit the ball harder than most 14-year-olds. And the baseball traveling at higher velocities also mean that it's easier for 14-year-olds to get hit by the baseball. So in this dream, I'm just kind of not wanting to go through with playing, and it just ends before the game starts. In the actual video game, this sort of just ties in with what I put in from the first baseball dream. The only thing that happened was I was in an SUV with my friends on the way home from a trip. I was also tripping balls or something because everything outside of the SUV was moving and changing shape and my head was all foggy. This dream is pretty uneventful, but I think it could be cool in game form. Like you're placed inside of a car where you can just look around and the car is driving down a never-ending road with just a bunch of strange scenery outside that changes color and shape. Weird stuff could also spawn on the side of the road like balls of yarn, cats, and possibly more cats. Also, the car could drive through other areas in the game, like outside of the baseball stadium or grocery store, or the dream could even end with random car accidents if it's a nightmare or something. I'm at a crazy video game store with a bunch of games to trade in. This includes 3 very rare ones that I'm excited to receive an offer on. I end up getting $1,500 for each and I immediately wake up. This type of disappointment happens frequently in my dreams. I fell back asleep shortly after and I'm at a lake house that is a common hangout spot for me and my friends. I'm about to go out to eat with the boys and I'm playing catch with one of my friends before we leave. Instead of a football, however, we're playing catch with a mini CRT TV. Being the sure-handed gentleman that I am, I catch it with one hand. A third friend wants in on the action and runs a streak route like it's a football, but the one throwing the TV overthrows them and it shatters in the street. This just gives me the idea of a lake area in the game where you can observe crazy things that happen on the lake. Like maybe like a rubber duck or possibly something such as a cat. This is the spookiest one so far, so I'm warning you guys. It also might just be more sleep paralysis than it is a dream, which is like basically when you're half asleep and you can still hallucinate like you're in a dream, but your eyes are open and you can't move at all. It happened to me like a decent amount as a kid, but every once in a while it comes back. The dream or sleep paralysis or whatever it was just me laying in my bed and looking at the doorway. As I'm looking at the doorway, I saw a completely dark figure emerge. First it was smaller and I wrote that it looked like a dark outline of Luigi for some reason. But then it grew in size and almost looked like an outline of a Bloodborne character or something. Keep in mind this whole time I can't move at all, I just kinda have to stare at the thing until I eventually wake up completely. Now sometimes when I sleep, I like to play this large playlist of video game songs that are mostly pretty relaxing. There are a few exceptions on the list that I just put on there because I think it's funny. And what do you know, some song from LSD Dream Emulator is playing when I wake up, which is about the worst timing possible because this soundtrack is not exactly relaxing. This isn't the end of the dream, however. I managed to compose myself and go back to sleep, and then I had another weird dream where part of my house is like a dentist's office and I had to get my teeth checked on. It was just like a strange, like, old-timey dentist office that did not seem right. It was not pleasant either. Luckily, that was the last dream that night. The dark figures could be used in the game in a similar way to the Gray Man. I think dark figures creeping behind you and peeking around with changing shapes would be spooky. Also, ideally, they would never attack you or anything. They would just kind of follow you or peek around corners and stare at you. This will be the last day of the video, but trust me, I'm ending on a good one, so don't have a large amount of food in your mouth, or else you might choke and I refuse to be held responsible. So I went to many stores with my dad that looked sort of like Toys R Us, GameStop, Walmart, or Old Navy. Or as I directly quote from my journal, a store that would morph into all of these stores depending on where I was at in the store. Everything that I want here is too expensive, especially in the hard liquor section that was conveniently in the video game section of the Toys R Us. Lots of fancy liquors were displayed on tables there, but the one that took the cake was a $700 bottle of vodka. My dad decided to pour a bunch of it in a glass that he had for some reason. And I asked him if he's going to drink all of it. Seems like a reasonable question, and he just kind of gets offended and takes the tiniest sip out of it possible, and then just puts the glass on the table and goes to another section of the store without drinking the rest of it or paying for it or anything. I was looking at other items in the store, and I remember gazing upon some more overpriced things like big stuffed animals, and I just thought to myself, shopping just isn't what it used to be when I was a child, and bought nothing. So my dad and I get to the parking lot and there's a lot of commotion and chaos there. Multiple trucks of all shapes and sizes are driving around aimlessly because there's a competition in the parking lot to decide once and for all who has the best truck. The main factors in this competition were the truck's size and speed, and my dad says our truck is the best. Directly quoting from the journal, I remind him that the Ford F-150 has the most size and can drive over every other truck with ease, and he agrees. Still, we decided to film a video to prove how good our truck was. My dad wants to make it a stunt video, so naturally we drive to the middle of the forest and there's a slippery slope there. My dad's idea for the stunt is to drive down the slope as fast as possible, and I obviously oppose to this idea because the truck will probably flip over, but it does it anyways. The truck doesn't flip by some miracle, and us driving down the slope somehow took up the first 10 minutes of our video. The truck then goes back up the slope and is kicked into hyperdrive, and we fly into space and I wake up. It's at this point that I'm realizing that an LSD Dream Emulator 2 based off of my dreams would be sort of insane. In summary, it will have baseball stadiums reminiscent of Nicktoons MLB, dimly lit grocery stores with magical cats and faintly whispering voices, an ocean with one singular island, a room full of screaming people on a VR headset, my grandma's house, a smoothie place, a lake where the people around it practice questionable CRT safety, an endless trippy SUV ride, dark figures that follow your every move, a dentist office, a store that morphs into many other stores as you walk through it, and last but not least, a truck competition with trucks that could go into hyperspeed and into space, and also the Ford F-150, which is superior to those trucks. Seems like a pretty sweet game to me. No.